Surat-ul Qaf. It is what the ulama call the first surah of the Suratul Mufassalat. It is the first surah of the short surahs of the Quran. Before Surat Qaf, you would find that majority, if not all of the surahs, they were very lengthy. They were very long. So it would be very difficult to recite one of the surahs that came before Surat Al-Qaf. It would be very difficult to recite it in one rak'ah. If you were praying and you wanted to recite an entire surah in one rak'ah, anything that comes before Surat Qaf is quite difficult because of its length. So this is why the ulama, even the Sahabas, they named that Surat Qaf, it is the beginning of the shorter surahs. This is why it is sunnah that any surahs that come after Surat Qaf until the end of the Quran, it is sunnah to recite these surahs in Salatul Maghrib. In order that Salatul Maghrib is shortened, but in a manner that is proper, you choose any of the surahs that come after Surat Qaf. Some of the virtues of this particular surah. Why did we choose this surah? We come to a very important narration that Umar radiallahu anhu, he was asked, what did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite on Eid prayer? Okay, so the Eid al-Fitr and the Eid al-Adha. What surah did the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam recite in that prayer? It was told, he replied that he was recited Surat Qaf and Surat Qamar. Okay, so these two surahs were recited during the times of Eid. In another narration, narrated in the Sahih Muslim, it was said that Hisham radiallahu anha, she said that for around 2 years, our oven, meaning her oven, and the oven of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam were one, meaning they shared the same oven. And she memorized Surat Qaf from the lips, from the mouth of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. What does this mean? That she would constantly hear him reciting the surah. And she memorized it simply by hearing it from him, reciting it. And she also mentions that he used to recite this particular surah on Yawm al-Jum'ah, as well as the Eid prayers. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, reciting this particular surah in large gatherings. This is the ibrah, this is the explanation here, is that in large gatherings, this particular surah, he would recite it constantly. The question is why? Why is it important for him sallallahu alaihi wasallam to recite this surah, especially in large gatherings? The reasons are as follows. Ulama tell us, after studying the surah, they find that in this particular surah, Surat Qaf, you find that there is reminders of the beginning of the creation of mankind. In it, there are also signs explaining some of the things that will happen on the Day of Judgment. In Surat Qaf, there are also indications of what will happen to the people of the hellfire and what will happen to the people of Jannah. So it is talking about Jahannam as well as the Jannah. It is also talking about the rewards and punishments of Allah Azza wa Jal. In Surat Qaf, it is also talking about the things that are encouraged in this religion, as well as the things that are discouraged, that are hated by Allah Azza wa Jal. So you can see, simply by us mentioning these few points, you can see already Surat Qaf encompasses a large amount of knowledge in this religion. A person who studies Surat Qaf and understands it well, will understand majority of the topics that have to do with our Aql Islam. By simply studying this one surah, they will have a brief insight of Yawm al-Qiyamah. They will have an insight of who Allah Azza wa Jal is, some of His attributes. They will also study what the Quran is. They will also learn about history. They will also learn about the Jannah and the Jahannam, what will happen in the Akhirah. They will also learn about the grave. Many, many things will come out only in this one particular surah. Furthermore, brothers and sisters, Surat Qaf is also classified amongst the Surat al-Muqatti'at. By this we mean the surahs that begin with disjointed letters. An example is, as we mentioned, this particular surah starts with a letter, Qaf, as well as many other surahs that start with Alif, Lam, Mim, Kaf, Ha, Ya, Ain, Sad, Taha, Ya, Hamim. All of these surahs, they are called the surahs of disjointed letters. The important question here we want to know is, what does this mean? What do the disjointed letters mean? We won't only study what this letter Qaf in this particular surah means, but we're going to take a brief lesson of what all the disjointed letters in the Quran, what are they talking about? Ulama rahmatullahi alayhim have a number of interpretations, explanations as to what this means. Number one, some of the Orientalists, the people who are not Muslim, who try to explain Quran or try to explain Sunnah, try to explain this religion of Islam, they have a very ignorant explanation of what these letters mean. As for them, they say that these letters are actually signatures of the scribes of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So though the Quran for him sallallahu alaihi wasallam, this was their signature. They would just write a letter, and this was enough to indicate who they were. This, of course, is refuted in many, many ways. This was never a practice of any of the companions. Another opinion of what these disjointed letters mean is ulama say that they are mutashabih, they are unclear. Okay, so nobody really knows what these letters mean. This perhaps is the safest opinion. It's the safest opinion that we don't have a clear understanding of what the meaning of these letters are. However, it is important to note that just because the meaning is unclear does not mean there isn't a meaning. Okay, this is an important point. Just because we don't know exactly what it means doesn't mean that there doesn't exist a meaning. There exists a meaning to this. Allah Azza wa Jal commands us in the Quran to recite His book as well as learn it and understand it. And there's no way that we can learn and understand the Quran without having some background of its meaning. So there is some meaning to it, but it is mutashabih. It is unclear what it is. From the opinions of what these letters are about is that they stand for specific meanings. So each letter, like acronyms, each letter stands for something. So you have, for example, Alif, Lam, Mim. Some of the people put words for each of these letters and say Alif means for I, meaning me, Lam means for Allah, and Me means for something else. And so they put these acronyms in each of them. This is, of course, there is no proof for this in the Quran nor even in the Sunnah. Any of the Sahabas ever did this. So, an opinion as to what this means, these huruf, these letters, is that, and this is possibly a plausible meaning, is that they were meant to cause confusion to the disbelievers. Okay, it was meant to surprise them, cause them to be baffled of the Quran and the miraculous nature of the Quran. So the disbelievers, when they heard something like Qaf, they became surprised and try to understand, what is that? What is this? They know the letter, but the manner in which it's used, it baffled them. This here is plausible, meaning perhaps there is some truth to this. Many scholars of Islam accepted this as a possible understanding or insight as to what these huruf are meant. From the opinions is that these are actual names of the surahs. So as we're talking about Surah Qaf, we're referred to it by its letter, Surat Qaf. Then you have other surahs such as Surah Yasin, Surah Taha, okay, and many others. So this is possibly another indicator or reason as to what these letters are for. The problem with this one is it tells us the purpose of a letter. It doesn't give us a meaning. So we're still stuck. We still don't know what the meaning of these letters are. Another opinion is that it also shows the miraculous nature of the Quran, is that it can never be imitated in its style, in its presentation. And from another opinion, and perhaps this is the final one we will mention, is that the Arabs, when they heard these letters, immediately they understood that this was a miracle to them. Hearing the letters, which they already knew, but hearing them used in this manner, letters were being stretched, letters were being pronounced, hearing it in this manner alone was a miracle to them in and of itself. Perhaps how do we conclude this? We conclude by saying that these letters, the actual purpose of them, only Allah Azza wa Jal knows. We do not know what the purpose of these letters are. And we can also claim that after we mention these opinions, we can mention that these letters, they have meaning to them. And it is a miracle from Allah Azza wa Jal that these letters exist. Their actual meaning and purpose, Allahu A'lam. And so this is why we went to the second opinion, which is perhaps the safest one. Having said that, brothers and sisters, this is just a brief introduction to what Surat Qaf is, as well as what the letters, the huruf al-muqatti'at, the disjointed letters in the Quran, what their purpose is, and how we understand them, how we of the people of Quran and Sunnah, how is our approach to these particular letters. So having said that, let us begin on a beautiful journey, the journey of understanding what Allah Azza wa Jal wants to say to us. And we will take this journey in this particular surah, Surat Qaf, the 50th surah in the Quran, and we will discuss with you 45 ayat within the next few weeks.